Yo, what is good, YouTube? It's your boy Playmaker. It's a youngin' back on a return. So in today's video, we're gonna be talking about the Picat test. I'll be talking about the Picat. So basically, the Picat is the pending internet computerized adaptive test. So recruiters have the Picat test. So the Picat test is a way that you can take the ASVAL and you can basically take it at home, or you can take it in a recruiting office instead of taking the full ASVAL at MELPS. But with the Picat, after you pass the Picat, you have to take a verification test at MELPS. But so I'm gonna be talking about the Picat. So basically, with the Picat is just like the ASVAL, but the Picat has 10 sections. So they have 10 sections. They have 10 sections. So the Picat has the general science, the arithmetic, reasoning, the math knowledge. You got the word knowledge. You got paragraph comprehension. You got auto shop. You got auto shop. Mechanics. Electronics, assembling objects, and I think that's it. But basically, the Picat, you have 10 sections. So it's just like the real ASVAL, but when you take like the real ASVAL at MELPS, it has like 9 sections on it. But the Picat is 10 sections, but see with the Picat, it's basically like it's basically like a win-win because like say for example you taking a verification test at MELPS, because after you pass the Picat you have to take a verification test. But like say for example you got to and you take the verification test and you fail the verification test, but if you fail the verification test, then you have another chance. You have another chance because if you fail the verification test, you'll have to take the real ASVAL again. And in my next video, I will be speaking on the verification test a little more. But like I was saying, it's basically like a win-win because I mean, like say you fail the verification test, like you fail it. But if you fail it, the computer will automatically regenerate and you'll take the full ASVAL again. But I mean, don't stress it out because you get another chance. And if you pass the ASVAL, then they'll just use that score and boom, you go in like that. So that's basically about the Picat. So the Picat is you take it at home or you take it at the recruiter office. It is not proctored. I mean, the only time the Picat is proctored if you taking it at the recruiting office. But I mean when you take it at home, I mean of course it's not proctored. You just take it at home on your regular computer. But but when you taking that Picat, do not do this though. Do not cheat on the Picat. Do not cheat on the Picat. I see this happen all the time. Folks cheat on the Picat and they take a verification test, they get scared. And they end up failing the verification test and they had to take the full ASVAL again. And when they take it, they're real scared because they know they cheated. So do not cheat on the Picat. Okay, so another thing about the Picat test, the Picat test is not time. When you take the Picat test, they give you 48 hours to take it, so you have 2 days to take it. So they give you 2 days to take it. When you take it, I mean, don't rush it. Take your time when you answer your question. Take as how much time as you have. I mean, you have 2 days, so take your time. Don't try to rush it. Just take your time. But but um that's about the Picat basically. It's 10 sections. It's not time. They give you 2 days to take it. But I'm gonna tell you about my experience of me taking the Picat test. Okay, so how it had went when I when I had went when I first to the podcast I took okay so how I did it not okay so how I did it I'm sorry y'all I be talking too fast all the time. Okay, so how I did it, I first to the podcast at my recruiter office, and she got me registered for the podcast and everything. And she got me registered, so I took it at the office. But when I was taking my podcast at the office, I mean, I was rushing. I was taking up as how much time that I can. I wasn't rushing. So I was taking the podcast at the office. I was taking my time and I had made to the fifth section, but I mean while I was taking it was already 4 hours because I came in like at 4 o'clock to take the podcast test. So I mean it was 4 hours, and I mean I was only on my fifth section, and then my recruiter had came in. My recruiter had came in, and she was asking what section man, and I was like I'm on my fifth section. And she was saying and she had said that it's kind of take you on longer than I expected. So basically what she had printed out an sheet with the podcast code. So she gave me the sheet, and I finished the podcast at home. And then after I finished the podcast at home, I sent her a text message, and I had ended up passing the podcast with a 50. So I passed it with a 50. Okay, and I'm gonna tell you another thing about the podcast. And this is actually a secret because I don't think a lot of people know this. Okay, so when you take the podcast is supposed to give you 10 sections, but some people take the podcast and they only get they only get 5 sessions. But anytime when that happened though, anytime they get 5 sessions, that means you felt it. You felt it. I mean, if you were taking the podcast and they only gave you 5 sessions, I mean, I'm sorry to tell you that. I mean, I'm real sorry, but you felt it. But if you taking the podcast and when you taking the test and they give you all the 10 sections, then I mean you straight, you passed it. And after you finish the test, it's gonna say that you have completed the podcast, and it's gonna say something in bold, and it's gonna say that you must confirm your score in 30 days, and if you don't confirm your score in 30 days, then your score will not be validated anymore, and basically you had to go to Milks and take the full ass valve. So that's another thing with the podcast. So, but like I was saying, when you take the podcast, I mean you got 2 days to take it. So I mean you have a lot of time. I mean don't try to rush anything. You know, just take your time. You'll be straight. But I mean when you taking the podcast and you finish the podcast test with 10 sections, I mean you passed it. You good. And then boom, just take the verification test. And like I was saying, I'm gonna explain the verification test in my next video. And I mean, after you pass the podcast, you gotta take a verification test. I mean, and that's the next process of joining the military, whatever branch y'all are joining, you know. So that's basically the process with the podcast. And if you have a chance to take the podcast, I mean you should take it. You should take it. I mean, like I was saying, the podcast it's a win-win situation. So you should take the podcast. I mean, if you have a recruiter, I mean you should ask your recruiter about the podcast test. Ask them about the podcast. I mean ask them. Y'all should take it. Yeah, I should take it. I mean, and I kind of glad that I had took advantage of taking the podcast test because I have test anxiety myself because I know a lot of people have test anxiety because I have that myself. So because anytime I take like big tests or I have to like take a test in school, I be nervous. So that's another good thing about it. I mean, you know, when you take the Picat, I mean, boom, this could take it at home. I mean, it's kind of good to take it at home. I mean, it's not. It's kind of convenient. I mean, it's less stressful. But when you take the Picat at home, you want to have you want to have as much peace as you can taking the Picat at home, because taking the Picat at home, because you don't want to get distracted. You don't want to get distracted because you still got to understand that you taking the ASVAB test at home, because basically the Picat and the ASVAB is the same thing, but the only difference is that you take the ASVAB at MELS. When you take the Picat, it's a test at home, so that's the only difference, because the Picat it's not proctored, it's an unproctored test. The only time the Picat is proctored is you take the Picat in the recruiting office, but see nine times out of ten when you taking the Picat, you take it at home, because your recruiter will ask you, do you have your own computer? Cause you just can take it at home instead of you know, coming to the office, you know, wasting time there, you know. And basically, anytime we take the Picat at home, your recruiter will send you an access code. The recruiter will send you an access code, and then the recruiter will send you an access code to your phone. So they will send it to your phone, and anytime when you log into your computer, you're gonna use internet. You're gonna use Internet Explorer to take your Picat test, you're just gonna use the same. You're just gonna use the same link that your recruiter gave you. You're just gonna use that same link. And it's gonna be like the access code, and you gotta type in your social security card, and you had to type in your last name, and then you go from there when you taking it. And like I said, like the Picat is it's very convenient. So basically, I mean, that's it. That's really what the Picat is. I mean, like I was saying, if you have a chance to take the Picat, I mean, you should go for it. You should take it. You should take it. But so that is it in this video. I'll just give y'all an explanation of the Picat. If you have any questions, just ask in the comments, and I'll put my social media in the description. And I appreciate the love and support, and I'm out. Peace. See you the next one.